Welcome back to Introduction to Synthesizers, a free course that will teach you all the skills you need to start working with synths. In our previous video, we learned how all synthesizers, regardless of type, follow the same simple three-step process for creating new sounds. They produce a raw sound, they modify that sound, and then they amplify it so it can be heard. In this video, we're going to learn about filters, which are technically part of step number 1, producing your raw sound. Together, we're going to learn what a filter is, why you use it, when you use it, as well as some practical tips on how to identify them and work with them, regardless of whatever synthesizer you happen to be using. So with that, let's get started. So as we learned in the last video, most synthesizers will produce the basic foundation of their sound using oscillators. The sound waves produced by these oscillators often contain complex ratios of frequencies. Right now, I am playing middle C using a simple sine wave from a synth called Absynth 6. Sine waves are the simplest sound waves in existence. They contain only a single frequency, the fundamental. That means when I play middle C, the only frequency being produced is the frequency of middle C, or roughly about 261 hertz. Because this is the only frequency heard, a filter won't be too useful with a single sine wave like this. However, if we pull up something more complex, like a saw wave, boom, suddenly we see a whole host of different frequencies that appear. The number and ratios of different frequencies contained within a single sound wave are what give each sound their unique timbre, their personality. This is why a trombone and a cello can both play middle C, but you can still tell which instrument is playing, because a trombone does not sound like a cello. They have different frequency profiles. A filter can be used to modify your timbre by removing various frequencies from your sound, changing the color and personality of your instrument depending on the type of filter you're using and the different settings you've chosen. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might be wondering, hey, wait a minute, isn't this step 2, modifying your raw sound? Very clever. All right, glad you've been following along. And sure, there is an argument that could be made. But for the purposes of this series, I'm going to categorize these steps just a little bit further. All right, just to keep things clear. Step number 1 is going to focus mostly about shaping the basic timbre. Step number 2 will focus mostly on introducing things like modulation and movement, or applying effects to the synth. Okay, so that's not super important for you to know right now, but I did want to make sure that I brought it up so that it doesn't confuse anyone. Anywho, back to the topic at hand. Regardless of which type of filter you're using to shape your sound, all filters will have at least 4 different elements in common. So let's learn about each of these first before we tackle the different types of filters you're most likely to work with. And to learn about them, we are going to use the most common and popular type of filter, a low-pass filter. A low-pass filter does exactly what the name implies. It allows lower frequencies to pass through unfiltered, while removing or filtering out the higher frequencies. The higher frequencies are what give a sound its bright, sometimes harsh qualities. So removing them results in an overall darker or rounder quality. For this to work, the filter needs to be given a specific frequency to call home. All frequencies below this point will be allowed to pass through, and anything above will start to get cut out. This specific frequency is called your cutoff frequency. For a low-pass filter, the lower your cutoff frequency, the darker and rounder your sound will become, because you're removing more frequencies from the sound than a higher cutoff would get. But this isn't the only component that has an impact. The next is something called the rate of attenuation. If the cutoff filter decides where you plant your filter, the rate of attenuation determines how strong your filter is. Think of it like this. A net with larger holes won't catch as many fish as a net with a finer mesh. In a filter, the rate of attenuation is described using something called poles. A single pole provides a 6 decibels per octave rate of attenuation. All right, this is just fancy talk. All this means is that when you apply a 1-pole filter every octave above your cutoff frequency is going to be reduced by an additional 6 decibels. So the frequencies 1 octave higher than your cutoff frequency are going to sound 6 decibels softer. If you move up another octave, those frequencies are going to get reduced 12 decibels. If you go up another octave, it's going to be 18 decibels. It's just going to keep getting softer and softer and softer, etc., etc., etc. If you have 2 poles, that rate gets doubled. If it's 4 poles, it gets quadrupled, etc. You get the point. The more poles you use, the more dramatically your filter will impact your sound. So one of the easiest ways to set up a low-pass filter is to start with your cutoff frequency as high as possible, so that it's barely having any effect. Then select the rate of attenuation you'd like. In this plugin, it doesn't show the number of poles, it just directly shows the rate of attenuation. So this would be 1 pole, 2 poles, 3 poles, etc. I usually recommend starting with around 2 poles, so like minus 12 decibels per octave, unless you have a specific reason for wanting a super strong effect or a super light effect. But once you've found your starting rate of attenuation, I would recommend playing a single note with a keyboard over and over again. You don't need a keyboard to learn synthesis, but I am going to recommend it. You should have a MIDI keyboard. I'll have a couple different options linked in the description of the video that I can recommend. It just makes the whole thing much easier, much simpler, and helps you really get the sounds underneath your fingers. But neither here nor there. Start by playing a single note. Usually I recommend middle C for reasons that we are going to discuss in a moment, and gradually start lowering your cutoff until you find a sound that you like. When you've reached that point, call it good, unless you would like to experiment with different rates of attenuation as well until you feel 100% confident in your choice. Once you have figured out these 2 components, the next option that you can play around with is something called filter resonance. And for this, I'm going to move to a different plugin. So here we are in Absynth 6 once again. This is our oscillator, and this is our low-pass filter. Here we have our cutoff frequency, here we have our poles, and this little knob right here is our resonance. Filter resonance is a cool little option that helps you boost your cutoff frequency so it sounds a little bit louder, while making the rest of your sound filter sound a little more muted. This can be used to give your sound a little more brightness, especially when you've used a super strong filter. It's also useful for just giving a bit more edge to your synth by adding a kind of little bit of a point to the sound. If you crank it really high, filter resonance can cause something called self-oscillation, which is a kind of special effect when the cutoff frequency is emphasized so strongly that it starts to sound like its own additional pitch, which you can use to harmonize your sound subtly or not so subtly, depending on where you place your cutoff frequency. So here you can see a nice handy little visualization of the resonance in Absynth 6. And if we go back to our oscilloscope, you can see that this right here is our fundamental, and this right here is our highly resonant cutoff frequency. If I drop the resonance back down, you'll see it's no longer sticking out as much. We are going to learn a bunch of really cool strategies for applying filter resonance in sound design later in this series. But for now, we're going to just treat it like a simple third step to setting up a filter. Start with your resonance set to 0, and then slowly start to increase it until you have a sound that you like. Finally, step number 4 is to apply key tracking. Key tracking is a simple but powerful tool for modulation in synths. Remember from our last video that in sound design, modulation just simply means applying some kind of change in real time. For filters, key tracking essentially applies your filter as a ratio. In other words, if my cutoff filter is set 1 octave above middle C, then if I turn key tracking on, that means the cutoff filter will change to be 1 octave above whichever note I happen to be playing. But with key tracking turned off, the cutoff filter won't change at all, since it remains at a fixed point. That means each note will be impacted differently by the same filter, because if that cutoff is set an octave above middle C, dropping below middle C with my notes will mean that the cutoff filter is placed more than an octave above each note. If I move above middle C, that octave becomes smaller and smaller. Lower notes will have a weaker effect from a low-pass filter, while higher notes will have a stronger effect. Most synths use middle C as the reference point for applying key tracking to your filters, which is why I recommend using it as a reference when setting up your filters. Now, it should be noted that key tracking can often be applied to multiple different parameters of a synth, and I will eventually have a video dedicated to the most common applications of this powerful little tool, but for now, again, it's okay to just think of it as part of your filters. These 4 components, cutoff frequency, rate of attenuation, resonance, and key tracking, can all be found in nearly every single synth. In Absynth 6, the cutoff is controlled by this knob here, while the rate of attenuation is controlled with this drop-down menu right here. We can control resonance with this knob, and key tracking is found in the assign window up here, where you click note scaling, identify the filter for oscillator A, and can get things set up. Now here the process is a little unique. You'll start by clicking this little MIDI note button, and then playing the lowest note you plan on using for this synth. Let's say the C an octave lower than middle C. That identifies it as C2 in this synth. I will then use this scale slider and gradually lower the cutoff until I get the sound I want. Then I will do the same for the highest note that I plan to play. Then, using my mouse, I'm just going to draw a nice little line connecting the two. In Massive X, it's a little more straightforward. The little F box here is the filter. You select the type here. This is the cutoff frequency. This is the rate of attenuation, rated in poles. This little knob controls resonance. And the key tracking is controlled with this little guy right here. If you crank it all the way to the right, key tracking is turned on. Crank it all the way to the left, key tracking gets turned off. Much simpler than Absynth 6, but not as customizable. Almost every single synth will have some variation of these 4 parameters on their filters. If you can identify them, you are going to be that much closer to mastering whichever synth you choose to be working with. Speaking of which, you can support this channel and grab yourself your very own super cool synth, my personal favorite being Massive X, by using the affiliate link in the description of this video. So check it out. But with that, let's get back to the topic at hand. Low-pass filters aren't the only types of filters you can use. There are also high-pass filters, which do the opposite. They filter out lower frequencies while allowing higher frequencies to pass through unimpacted. While they behave differently, high-pass filters contain the same basic components. They have a cutoff frequency, a rate of attenuation, resonance, and key tracking. And bandpass filters are a combination of both low-pass and high-pass filters, containing 2 different cutoff frequencies, allowing only the frequencies found in between to pass through unimpacted. The only rule behind sound design is that sound is king. So you don't need any special reason to choose between which filter you use at any given point, other than the knowledge and confidence that you think it gets the sound you're looking for. However, I do understand that's not really helpful to most people, and this series does focus on practical applications, so I'm going to give you some simple tips on when you should consider using each type of filter. First up, low-pass filters. We know these little goobers pretty well by now. You can use a low-pass filter anytime you want a sound to be darker, warmer, muffled, or more intimate. Low-pass filters are great for creating pads that can sit underneath dialogue without clashing. They're also great for creating subdued and intimate sounds that don't need to bring too much attention to themselves. We've already covered the process for applying these, so I'm not going to worry too much about going deeper into it for now. But next up, we have the high-pass filters, which are useful for the opposite reasons. They are a fantastic choice anytime you need a synth to sound lighter, thinner, brighter, or just a little more shimmery. A high-pass filter helps remove muddiness or low end from a sound, which makes it great for creating a sense of space or clarity. They are also good choices for synths that need to layer well with orchestral instruments because they help clear space for the lower voices of your orchestra. They're also really good for special effects and shimmery qualities, or for creating ambient sounds that feel like they can be heard from a great distance. To apply a high-pass filter, just follow a similar protocol to the low-pass filter. Pick a starting rate of attenuation, start with a cutoff frequency super low so it's not filtering anything out, and then slowly start raising it until you have the sound that you want. Experiment with different rates of attenuation, amounts of resonance, and then decide whether you'd like to apply the key tracking or not. Finally, bandpass filters are the best of both worlds. They're useful for synths that need to feel focused. narrow, or even a little nasal. You'll find that they tend to be at home best in very tight rhythmic sounds, things like plucks or percussive synths. And setting up a bandpass filter is a little more complex, but it's not too difficult. You just start out by figuring out your low-pass filter first, and then figure out your high-pass filter. If you want a good general guide, I would say low-pass filters are the best choice for an all-around option. High-pass filters are great if you want something shimmery or a special effects type sound. And when in doubt, a bandpass filter is a fantastic option for synths that need to play more rhythmic roles. We are almost to the end of this video. And the very last thing to tackle is how these tools apply to our larger workflow. Again, this is not dogma, and you are more than welcome to come up with your own workflow. But personally, the way I tend to approach synths is I would start by deciding which type of synth I'm trying to create. In this case, a lead, pluck, pad, or bass. Then I would select my initial oscillator, set up my amp envelope, and then apply my filter. These simple few steps we've learned in just these first 2 videos are more than enough to create any number of incredible synths. So, with that taken care of, we have reached the end of another video, my friends. Today, we have added the following items to your new synth checklist. If you find yourself working with a new synth, and you can identify these simple tools, you will be that much closer to mastering your new instrument. A special thank you goes to my patrons, my channel members, and to the folks at Native Instruments for sharing a copy of their new instrument, Absynth 6, with me. You can use the affiliate link in the description of this video to grab a copy of Absynth 6, or my personal favorite synth, Massive X, so you can follow along with the rest of the series. While you're there, consider grabbing yourself one of their incredible keyboards as well. But until next time, my friends, keep studying, keep working hard, and keep writing new music. I will see you in the next video.